Hey, welcome everybody to the Legal Tech Week show for May 12th, 2023. This is Legal Tech Week. This is a show where we talk about the top stories in legal tech and innovation that happened this week. And I'm Bob Ambrogi. I have a legal tech blog called Law Sites and a legal tech podcast called Law Next. And we've got a little bit of a light panel this week, but that's okay because we've got stuff to talk about. So let's introduce everybody. Victor, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here. And Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie Wilkins, Editor-in-Chief of Legal Tech News at LTN, and there keeps being like a leaf blower or something going off and on. So I'll try to mute myself, but if it's weird, I don't know what's going on out there.
Oh, no problem. I just got off a podcast where it was like a constant trying to cancel outside noises for the entire recording period, but that happens. And last but not least, Steve Embry.
Hey, Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads. Like Victor, I'm happy to be here. And we have now arrived at the time of the year, at least in my neighborhood, where you cannot go 10 minutes without a power mower blaring or a blower blaring someplace. So I could also be subject to disruptive noises.
No problem. All right. Well, this is the Welcome to the World Joe's New Kid edition of the show. Joe Patrice is not with us because he just had a baby yesterday. And we just got a little sneak preview of the baby in our little green room before we started the recording, but the baby wasn't quite ready to go prime time yet. Hadn't fully formed her opinions about GPT, I guess. So we're going to have her on another edition. What we're all seeing this week. I don't know, Victor, you might not be seeing this as much. I don't know if you're as much getting some of this stuff, but CLOC starts Monday. The Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. What do they call it? Conference? No, they don't call it a conference. Whatever they call it at the Bellagio in Vegas. And there's been a flurry of pre-CLOC news coming down this week, and it's to me it's actually kind of interesting because I have felt lately that this kind of the pre-show news for like ABA Tech Show and Legal Week has not had the flow it's had in past years, but it's really picked up for CLOC this year compared to past years. Lots of matter management stuff, lots of contract related stuff, as you might expect for a legal operations conference. But I mean, is anybody else feeling that? Just this kind of overwhelming quantity of stuff?
It's out of control. I mean, I feel like it is busier than the Legal Week announcements were, and I literally I'll get up and go get a cup of coffee and come back to 7 new emails, and I'm like, what is happening? I mean, I guess it's better. They're trying to get it in advance, which I appreciate with embargoes, but yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, but you actually have a staff who can help you write these things. It's like I'm like looking at this. I was actually like sitting here making a list of like things that are being announced next week and trying to think to myself, okay, which ones am I going to have actually time to write about? Because there's only so many days, and it just happens to be Mother's Day this weekend and some other stuff going on.
Are you going?
I'm going to be spending my weekend, huh?
Are you going? I can't.
I'm not going to CLOC. No, I've been on the fence for a long time. When I finally came off the fence, it was the airfares are just so crazy. I just couldn't justify it. It was going to cost me over $1,000 to fly. And
I'm going.
Has gotten expensive.
Oh.
I am not going, and the reason I'm not going is I was telling somebody today it's the ABA Law Practice Division Spring Business Meeting starts on Tuesday, so that would make it kind of problematic. And as chair of the LP division, I really don't want to be absent for our spring meeting and have somebody say, "Where's that Embry guy? Oh, he's at the Bellagio in Las Vegas and couldn't make it this week." So I'll have to skip.
They invited me a bunch of times like early on, but then like before they got big. But then I feel like once they got big, and also I think also I couldn't go like those times they invited me, so everything's dropped me off the list. But yeah, but now I feel like they've gotten big time, they've gotten more mainstream. So now it's like, all right, you lost your chance to be part of the cool crowd.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm still on my, first year at the job conference circuit and sort of getting out to all of them. And next year I'll figure out which ones I go to and which ones I don't. So it's all still new to me. I'm definitely not staying at the Bellagio because that's not journalist money sort of lodging. But yeah, I'm also not a huge Vegas fan, but I'm excited for the conference just to see what's going on, if the press we just talked about is any indication, there's going to be a lot of announcements of varying degrees of import.
Victor, I think the ABA Journal is probably ranks as important enough to be invited. That's actually another interesting thing is they had a little bit more of a press conscious approach to the conference this year. I don't actually ever even remember being invited in the past. I reached out. I don't think they ever invited me. But this year they did and reach out and extend an invitation. And then they had a media briefing earlier this week, which I asked if I should go if I'm not going to the conference, and they said yes, you should. And then it really was just about stuff at the conference. So I'm not sure why they had me at the media briefing, but it was useful. I mean, they outlined, they are going to have a media room, and they kind of outlined who to contact for different kinds of things and all of that. So they're definitely.
I've got to ask, Bob. I've got to ask: Are they going to give you meals?
Ask Stephanie. She's the only one who's going to be there needing to be fed.
Oh, that's right.
You can't find cheap food in Vegas.
Yeah, I think I'm glad I actually missed the media briefing. I had another meeting at the same time, and they said they're going to send a video. So thank you for filling me in on what they said.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had slides. If you read the slides, you don't have to watch the video.
Yeah. Do you think because there's been that whole division within the leadership of CLOC, this is what I've heard, and there's going to be now that other conference. So do you think that has anything to do with more of like the media push?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, there's not the first time there's been some dissension within CLOC, but yeah, there is that other conference that Connie Breton, who originally helped found CLOC, is now putting on next October, as if October isn't already full enough of legal tech conferences. But that'll be something else we can put on our agendas to not go to or go to. We'll see.
No, I'm already tired from October.
Right, October is that's gonna be crazy. So of some of the announcements that have already been made coming ahead, and obviously we're under embargo for some of these things that are getting announced Monday and Tuesday, but several of us were on a call this week in which LexisNexis did something similar to what it did a few weeks ago, which is it announced a sort of a preview launch of a new product for in-house, primarily for in-house legal teams, that is called Lexis Connect, and it is a kind of an AI-powered matter management platform that works within Microsoft Teams. And they had a press briefing this week. They jointly announced it with Microsoft. Some of you who watch this podcast or listen to this podcast may remember a few weeks ago they launched Lexis Plus AI, which is their new generative AI powered legal research platform. And with that launch, there was kind of a we're telling you about it, but it's not quite ready for prime time, and we'll let you know when it's really ready to go. This was similar. They're really just putting it out for a preview to test with a small group of legal departments that may be interested in doing this. Microsoft's one of the departments within Microsoft's legal group is going to be testing it, and they said they were looking for another 5 or 6 potential law departments to work with in testing it. It's my takeaway. I'd love to hear your all takeaway. My takeaway was I think it's very interesting because again they are talking about incorporating generative AI. They're talking about trying to make this all work right within Teams and Outlook. You know, in the theory, this is where lawyers work, and this is where they want stuff, and they don't want to be having to do a lot of platform switching. And I think there's a lot of sense to that. At the same time, it's really hard to get a handle on what the there is at this point, and where we are in the development of this. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it was I mean, yeah, it was kind of confusing to follow the announcements. There's a lot of different moving pieces and understanding how they fit together. And also because, you know, as you said, this is sort of a preview. When they said, you know, they're looking to sign up more people at CLOC, when they said 5 to 6, I was kind of shocked at that low number. I thought it was gonna be like 5 to 600. I mean, maybe not 100, but you know, it's like, it's a very, very limited preview of it. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I had the same reaction as both of you did, although, you know, in reflecting on it, I guess the problem that they have identified that these tools might help solve, particularly for in-house counsel, and that is having a lot of repetitive kind of questions that are relatively easy to answer, but take time away from more substantive tasks to do. And if you can create an automated tool to do some of that kind of stuff, I guess it would be ease the burden on in-house counsel. I think there was another survey that came out here recently about in-house counsel and the demands that are being placed upon them and the lack of resources, and they're expected to do more and more and more and more, and yet they don't have the tools and the bodies to do it, to keep up with the work that they have, plus the increased demand that appears to be happening. So, you know, I kind of walked away thinking, well, their heart's in the right place, but not exactly sure what this product will do yet.
Yeah, and I did think, I mean, I feel like there have been fewer products, at least fully pitching themselves at in-house counsel. So I think that's a good tech for them, because I mean, contracts, obviously, things like that, but more broadly as here's a tool designed for in-house counsel is, I mean, I hope we see more of that going forward. So I'm curious to see how it pans out and what we see in the future. And like you said, I mean, addressing those problems is important.
Yeah, well, and it could have a, sort of another indirect impact, and that as if in-house counsel begin to use more and more tools like this and become used to them and like them, they probably will insist more and more that their outside lawyers use similar kind of tools to be more efficient. So, who knows? It could all begin to change what's going on in legal, although I remain skeptical that that'll ever happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought it's been interesting. We've been noticing this for a little bit that, with a lot of legal tech, it's the clients are pushing the law firms to adopt it, right? But with this, I feel like with AI stuff, we're hearing more from law firms and not as much from in-house of how they're using it, or if they're using it, or if they're afraid of it. So I'm actually curious on that aspect to see what comes out of CLOC, to get more of a read on where in-house and legal ops stands on their adoption of it.
Yeah.
I had a question because I actually wasn't able to make it, but so I assume that they're using the Microsoft Bing. Is that the main? Is that the chat whatever model that they're using for this, or do they have to develop a brand new one?
They did not say.
Do not say.
And somehow Stephanie forgot to ask.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it would make sense, right? And if that's good, it's good for Microsoft because they're getting, any little thing that allows them to kind of, because now you have somebody. You have people, all these other companies starting, launching their versions of GPT or whatnot. It's good for Microsoft if they can kind of, differentiate themselves from the pack and get like more. So many lawyers and professionals use Lexis. So if they can get their engine in there, then good for them.
Yeah, I assumed it would be the same answer and the same AI models they're using for the Lexis AI or Lexis plus AI. So I thought about asking Bob, but I'm like, it just felt like in the conversation I wasn't going to get an answer to that, so I just sort of let that go.
Yeah,
I think your assumption is correct on that.
I can read a room sometimes, you know.
yeah. I think the idea of particularly I think it's I think the idea of it is really good. And what I was more confused about during the presentation was which parts are real now, which parts are things we would like to have in here at some point. I mean, there was a reference at some point to the Outlook version of it, or an integration with Outlook, and the guys, the presenter, who I think is actually in the audience today, said, let me show you Outlook, and he went and showed Outlook, and then switched right back without showing anything. So I assume that means here's what Outlook looks like, but the integration isn't there yet. I might have missed something there, but I happened to be married to somebody who worked in a corporate legal department for many years, and I know that this problem of sort of managing and triaging these intake requests, that come in from sales and procurement and wherever else within a company can just be daunting, and there haven't been a lot of good systems for doing it. So I think the idea of being able to use AI to be able to do that is a good one. I don't think this is even necessarily the first one to do that. I know I wrote not long ago about Joseph Q, which is this sounds kind of similar in the sense that a company can sort of take all of its policies around compliance and HR and whatever, and then set up this interface where employees can ask questions, through a chat interface, ask questions like, can I do this under our HR policy? And it will answer it, using AI. But then this takes it really, the Lexis product takes it even beyond that into also becoming an AI, a chat tool for lawyers to be asking questions and even doing legal research. So it's like a Swiss Army knife of in-house chat interface, I think, in terms of offering a lot of options. So I think
I was just sitting here,
potentially be a cool product.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I was just sitting here sort of chuckling to myself, thinking, here we are, all of us are sitting here going, it's really weird that LexisNexis comes out with this announcement for features and benefits that aren't there yet. And boy, that's kind of strange. And I wondered how they do that. But then it suddenly occurred to me, like the rest of the tech world, they do that all the time, right? I mean, the Apple will come out and at their worldwide development conference with a whole bunch of stuff. It won't quite be ready yet. So, it's kind of, we have these sort of sometimes different expectations for tech and legal, but I mean, a lot of those guys, that's what they do. They promise, and maybe it happens and maybe it doesn't.
And to be fair, they're certainly not the only legal tech company saying we're going to do this. I mean, especially I feel like a lot of these embargoes and things we're getting Pre-CLOC they want the name out there for CLOC because it's an audience, right. And all of it might not be, ready for prime time yet, but everyone wants to get the news out there. So they're certainly not, unique in that.
Yeah. But again, it's funny how they're coming frequently. Like I mean, also yesterday that I wrote about the Lexis thing yesterday. I also yesterday wrote about this thing from Tonkin, their new Legal Works, which is again a matter management, AI-driven matter management for corporate legal. And again, it has what they call the AI front door, which is employees can chat questions. Basically, they can send it by email, again to Slack or Teams, and chat something like, I need an NDA, or I have a question about a policy, and this will help them attempt to resolve it without them necessarily having to go through the legal department to do it. And then it goes beyond, their product goes beyond that to also using GPT to help the legal teams when they actually do have to act on a request to to generate the NDA or whatever it may be using AI. So it's just suddenly this flood of products. And I think, as you say, other industries do this, but I think what ends up happening, first of all, everybody's just trying to be first to, first to kind of hop on the bandwagon of generative AI, and second of all, everybody just wants something to talk about next week at CLOC. I mean, that's part of what's driving all this. Obviously, that was the point of what we said originally, and you kind of think people maybe are rushing some of their announcements out there because they want to have it to talk about at CLOC.
And there's just more than we can even cover, because I mean, the one you just mentioned, I mean, we didn't cover, but we covered, there was an iCertis one and a Luminance one this week too. And it's just a lot. It's just a lot of AI coming through, especially in the contract space. And I mean, like, as we said, that's not a coincidence with CLOC coming up, but.
Yeah. I think it must be getting incredibly confusing for, I mean, it's confusing for us as trying to write about this stuff and cover this stuff. Imagine if you are working in a legal department and you're actually interested in possibly being a consumer of some of this stuff. It's going to be incredibly time consuming and difficult to go through the different products that are coming out on the market and compare them and figure out which one works and which one doesn't, and make sense of it all.
And I'm sure that's driving the announcements too, because, whatever your provider is currently, I'm sure you're asking them, do you have AI? You're like, and so everyone is finding, I mean, it's going to come to a point where if you don't, people are going to be like, what's wrong with you? So.
Yeah. What else is going on this week? Victor, since you've been, you were not so much involved in that stuff. What interested you this week? What are you watching?
Okay, so I picked this. There's a story. Well, I mean, it was widely reported, but the link I have specifically from Business Insider. I'll post it in this chat here. Hold on. Yeah, basically, the looks like the European Parliament has voted overwhelmingly in favor of adopting the first AI Act, a proposed law that aims to protect people from the risks of AI. And it's interesting, the proposed law would classify AI in 3 different categories. There's, the most extreme category is AI systems that cause unacceptable risk, and they would be banned. And then there's moderate risk, which is, it would be subject to some regulation and whatnot. And the third would be not too risky, and that wouldn't be, that would be largely left alone. And so obviously the devil's in the details, and how they define, risky and whatnot. I think one thing that is specifically in the story is that, things that promote disinformation or promote any kind of social scoring or any kind of that those would be classified as high risk, and they'll probably be banned or heavily regulated. So I thought it was interesting that they did that, and obviously it also shows that for a lot of things tech wise, the EU is kind of the ones leading the way as far as developing legal and political frameworks for regulation and whatnot. Because also the story, I don't know if this is intentional, but in the story they kind of talked about, oh well, in the U.S. the White House met with some big tech CEOs to discuss AI, and that was about it. I'm like, I don't know. That was sort of well, EU is doing this, all of this stuff, and then in the White House are just talking with some CEOs about it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, is testifying before Congress next Tuesday. But yeah, no, I agree. It's always the EU doing stuff, and then we think about it for a while, and then maybe do something, and maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah, we also know with GDPR. I'm sure it'll be like that going forward with this.
Yeah.
We're too busy trying to figure out how not to default on our debt in a month or so. Who's got time for this tech BS?
Yeah.
Or whether or not we should ban TikTok, those are the important things that we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't see it in the story. Maybe I missed it. But how do you determine which AI is more risky or less risky? Is it in how in what the purpose is that it's being used for, or is it in something about the nature of the algorithm itself? How do they,
So,
how do they make
I think
that
it's both. I think it's,
classification?
well,
I think
yeah.
it's
So what they
both.
say is that AI systems with an unacceptable level of risk to people's safety. So, including systems that deploy subliminal or purposefully manipulative techniques, exploit people's vulnerabilities, or being used for social scoring, classifying people based on social behavior, socioeconomic status, and personal characteristics. Um, so, and they also amended it to include like real-time biometric identification systems, geolocation for biometric predictive policing systems, and motion recognition systems in law enforcement. So it seems like it's pretty like, comprehensive as far as like, these are the things that they're afraid of, and these are the things that they don't want, and these are the things that they're probably gonna, crack down on. So I mean, it seems like it's pretty like comprehensive as far as like what they'd be looking for. But I mean, obviously, there could be other things as well that they're just not seeing at this point. But yeah, I mean, as far as like what they're concerned about and what they're worried about, it seems like that's sort of like what a lot of people are worried about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of what data they're targeting and then what they do with it too. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that in the legal context because I was thinking about, everybody's talking about the potential risk of using AI in legal, and needless to say, the risk probably isn't very high if you're using it to generate an NDA or something like that. I mean, number one, it's probably going to be reviewed by a lawyer or somebody before it goes out anyway. Number two, if it's not, and the NDA turns out to be fallible in some way, well, who really cares? I mean, that it's not like lives are going to be changed because of that in any big way. But if you're using AI to, perhaps begin to deliver legal help to low-income consumers, or provide answers to legal questions directly to people, then obviously the risk starts to be higher and the consequences start to be higher. I wonder if somehow that starts to come into play in the legal world at some point, some kind of a risk-based analysis of AI, or maybe it's already happening, I guess, but in some more formal way. It's an interesting idea.
Well, I remember I talked to someone in like I mean, obviously it's different. I mean, it'll obviously there'll be more scrutiny in the law enforcement fields and whatnot. But I mean, I was talking to one person in the field, like one of the predictive policing folks, and they were talking about how like they got approached by a prosecutor's office who wanted to wanted to like basically like based on analysis they did on like their cases, they found that people who had like just recently lost their jobs were making, between a certain level as far as like, I don't remember what the salary range was, pick your numbers. Then and so they lost their job. They were making a certain amount of money, and they like owed like a certain amount, like, and they had like a certain credit score, like, so to kind of to kind of show like what their wealth was like, I guess, that they were more susceptible to domestic disturbances and whatnot because there'd be more stress in the house, there'd be more, economic problems and whatnot. So they wanted to like kind of use that to then be able to identify people that they could then like either keep an eye on or go try to like get them to get preventive counseling. And these guys, to their credit, were like, okay, that's a little too much. We're not gonna put that together for you. And frankly, we don't have all that information anyway. But yeah, it's just like you could do all kinds of things with like with the data. And if you want to like, if you see certain patterns, you could like, you could create your own fact pattern. Like, okay, people who drive a certain car, who have recently got into an accident and did this and this, had this much insurance pay, had to pay this much insurance, and blah blah, or been sued recently for this, then you can extrapolate all kinds of data, and who knows where it can go.
Have you been hearing any murmurings within the ABA of any moves toward trying to develop standards or regulations or anything else around the use of AI?
I mean, there was a movement. I don't know what the current status of it, but there was a movement like this is before like the GPT stuff. This was back when this was a couple years ago, back when I think what was the big rage back a couple years ago? It's kind of hard. Everything kind of blends together now. But there was something.
Was their life before GPT? I don't know.
Yeah. There was something that like people were like really freaked out about. I don't remember. Yeah,
how far back do you want to go? Avo?
It might have been the cloud, but I don't remember. But this is a couple years ago, and like they were talking then about creating working groups to develop ethical guidelines and whatnot. But I don't know whatever happened to that.
I think there was actually a resolution that the Board of Governors or the House of Delegates or both passed about AI before ChatGPT, but it was one of those resolutions that, like, use of AI should be fair, kind of thing.
Right.
Let's all play nice with it, kind of thing. So I don't know that it did much of anything other than at least somebody was thinking about it.
Yeah, that might have been also in reaction to like racial profiling stuff that was coming out and whatnot.
Actually, I think it was more like a cybersecurity thing. Now that I think about it, I think it was like it was more AI and like related to cybersecurity and whatnot. That was sort of the impetus for it because they were worried about obviously lawyers not being ready for not securing the data and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean that was like more. This was back when it was more like about like that kind of stuff as opposed to what it is now.
Yeah. Well, one risk of AI is that it will accuse you of sexual harassment. Stephanie, you guys got a story about that this week.
Yes, or bribery. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to find a story that was not pre-CLOC news, so yeah, no, it's interesting. There's been a couple. There was an Australian mayor that, ChatGPT, one of the hallucinations was basically saying he was involved in bribery. It was a particularly, not just a crime, but one that is particularly relevant to, public officials. And then there was also, I think it was a law school administrator, falsely accused of sexual harassment. So the issue has come up of, can you bring defamation cases against ChatGPT, or if obviously not, but who would it be then, and can anyone be liable for that? And it's all new. It's just there's not really an answer yet, but it's just, I think it's just more significant because it's the tip of the iceberg of various kinds of lawsuits we're going to see coming out of all of this generative AI. I mean, it started with intellectual property, which makes sense, but I think it's just going to open up a lot of, it's a big can of worms, and I think the regulation will play into it that way too. But I mean, these tools are out there, you can't stop them. And I don't know, it's just going to be a bigger question of, I mean, we already have a problem with people not fact checking things. So if this is just adding to it and making it worse, I mean, I don't know where it goes. I don't think these lawsuits are necessarily going to succeed, but I think we'll see more of them.
Yeah, well, there was the American law school professor. Who was it? The law school professor who was a ChatGPT or something accused him of sexual harassment a while ago, and he did not sue. But anyway, Steve, I cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I think there could be some very interesting insurance coverage issues that flow out of all of this too. One guy raised to me, commented to one of my articles that, that if a lawyer were to use ChatGPT for legal matters and was wrong, would his malpractice carrier cover him or her, given the fact that the technical specifications for ChatGPT specifically say it should not be used for legal advice? And it's a pretty interesting question, but I think we'll see a lot of that kind of stuff. I agree with you, Stephanie.
Well, there was already that one morning, is it ALAS, I never know how to pronounce it, that they sent out the blast to law firms basically warning them to not use ChatGPT. So I mean, that's sort of a signal right there of where things might go.
So something I don't think I saw it in Cassandra's story, and I think she linked to I think it was a Reuters story that also was what the actual circumstances were about how ChatGPT came to generate this. I mean, was it this mayor himself who was who had queried ChatGPT and got this response back, or was this published in some way or used in some way? None of the articles seem to say what actually was. Did this appear in some newspaper or magazine or website or something? I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my impression being that it was somehow made public, but yeah, the articles are not really clear on it. And I think it was something like he had actually been involved in something involving a bribery thing, but he was on the good side of it and reporting somebody for bribery or something like that. But yeah, I mean, the underlying details are not all that clear.
Right. Because I mean, that would be more relevant under US law. I mean, Australia has, criminal defamation, where we don't have that in the United States. Right. And, you would have to be able to show that this was in fact published and shared with others, and that it in fact had some impact on your reputation. So, it's probably a tougher standard to meet to ever show defamation in under US law. But I think the potential is, I mean, sooner or later, there's going to be that lawsuit and it's going to happen. But probably the more risky area is when people actually are using ChatGPT to generate blog posts and news stories or whatever. I was complaining this morning because I saw this new tool out there to help people, use generative AI to draft Instagram posts. I'm like, how hard is it to draft a frickin' Instagram post that you need a generative AI to do it? What's happened to our brains?
Yeah, but all those hashtags can be so annoying to do. I mean, like, I honestly, if I can figure out a way to get around that and I would actually use GPT for that, just because it's so annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to take you, how much longer is it going to take you to generate a prompt, go to GPT, have GPT generate something, and then go back and copy and paste it into Instagram? I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole other.
Hey, you got to work to be lazy. Okay, so.
Takes work.
Eventually it'll be automatic, right? Like AI will just run run your social media for you, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that may lead into the story that I had cited, and that was the Google keynote for their I/O 2023 developer conference, which I can talk about now if you want me to, Bob.
I love it when you do the transitioning for me.
Well, the reason I kind of thought about it was when you were talking about, how it's going to take so much time to do this and this and this to get the response, and that when you look at some of the things that Google is proposing doing, that would perhaps address that very issue, as Google was able to do in the past. But so the keynote was all about AI, large language models, and if there's any question about what Google was going to do with it, it doesn't seem to be one now. One of the things that they want to do is make their search feature much more conversational, just like ChatGPT. And that, to me, that had a lot of serious sort of implications, because there's a lot of lawyers that have absolutely no idea what ChatGPT is or what it does, but they all use Google search, right? And so if they're now going to have the ability to have those kind of conversational interactions with a large language model, and the only one that they ever think about is Google, then Google may own the space, A, and B, it may make lawyers much more, and legal professionals much more willing to use these kind of models. But it's like a lot of things, it's got a long way to go. But the other thing I thought about is as they were talking about it is like, so if you ask the Google, is it Bard? I think it's Bard, a question, and is it going to give you an answer with 3 sponsored links in it to people that buy advertising on Google, or is it going to give you like a neutral thing? The other 2 things that they talked about that I thought was interesting was it was Help Me Write, which is a feature that will help you write emails or documents, and the example that they gave was suppose that your flight has been canceled and you don't like what the airlines offered you and you want to complain. And so it typed out a nice little response. And then, the guy said, well, what if you want to make it more likely that you'll get a response? And it typed out this much more detailed kind of response. But I was thinking as it was doing that, how much all of us spend sort of answering and dealing with routine emails that it's something like this could do for us would make it much easier and faster. And the final thing that I thought was really interesting was their photo editor. And some of these tools may already exist, I know, but I mean they were doing some really interesting things with removing objects from photos, which has been around for a while, but actually taking a photo. And so the picture is if Stephanie is in the photograph, you can outline Stephanie and then move her to the left or move her to the right or move her up or move her down and alter the picture, which when you think about it, that could be a kind of a dangerous proposition when you talk about photographic evidence and whether it's true or not true. But
thank you for not just deleting me. Thank you for removing me and not just deleting me.
The thing that was really interesting, though, is after they did that, they talked about responsible AI use, and they talked about formulating a procedure where they can install watermarks on images that were manufactured completely by AI and including metadata that would demonstrate whether a photo has been altered using one of these tools, which I thought that's got a lot of possibilities, to assist with judges and whether to allow evidence in or not allow evidence in. So I thought that was kind of positive. But all in all, it was a nicely done presentation. They didn't screw anything up like they did last time when something didn't work. And in fact, one of the presenters was up there doing something and sort of said as an aside, "Boy, it's really nice when this works like it's supposed to." But it was a nice keynote, and that looks like they're headed down the LLM AI road just like everybody else.
Yeah, I feel like you'll appreciate this. Somebody on Twitter spliced together every time he said AI in his speech. So it was just like AI. Yeah. And my team sent it to me and they were like, this is your job at ALM. All I do all day is talk to people about AI.
Yeah.
I'm like, thanks.
Was this the same? Is this where he talked about incorporating more direct answers into Google search? I remember reading about that earlier this week, and this idea that instead of deliver search results, or maybe in addition, I mean, they're going to just start giving you the answer. And
that's exactly right. Yep.
I thought that was something that struck me again as potentially having implications in the legal world, because suddenly people who are, again, people who self-represented litigants or pro se people who have a legal problem are going to go to Google and they're going to type in their question, and maybe Google's going to give them an answer, then maybe they're not going to go to some of the portal sites that have been set up by legal services organizations or other kinds of sites that have been created to help pro se litigants, it could end up making Google a central resource for legal information, as in any other field, not just legal. But
then at what point are they giving legal advice then? And that's I also just don't like that, because a lot of times you Google something and the multiple results like give you a resource you didn't even think of, or a new way to think about something. Like I want to be able to get the different aspects.
And like I say, I wonder about the way Google makes money is with advertising, right? So if you type in a legal question, you get this nice little response, and at the end of it, for more information, contact Morgan and Morgan, who's not that they did, I don't know if they did or not ad space, but some entity that buys ad space on Google, and that's your link that you would be sent to. It's makes me it makes me a little nervous if that's the road that they're going to go down.
Well, I mean, I assume if you're like a law firm and you produce this content and whatnot, then I mean, you probably, especially if you're serious about it, then I mean, you probably know how to how to do the Google's SEO and all that stuff to make sure that your stuff appears first. You probably pay for the you probably pay for the boost, and you also know how to like do your do all the stuff that you have to do in order to make it come up first. And then it's a good way for them to kind of get their content out there and get known and whatnot. But then if you're relying on that information, then what happens if there's something wrong with it, or if it's it's boosted but it's not accurate? So yeah, I mean it definitely kind of raises a lot of questions, but yeah, I mean ultimately with Google, it's kind of like this is their wheelhouse, right? I mean ultimately they're all about max. I mean I thought it was funny how just looking through the thing just right now, it's like they only have like one or two lines about Bard. so yeah, I mean I don't know, maybe they're already kind of maybe not talking about that so much, but yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting sort of like what I mean these products that they're introducing. I mean I think my wife would like the picture thing, because in our wedding photos we have some pictures with some couples that have since gotten divorced, so we have to kind of figure out how we're gonna it'd be nice to display some of those pictures again. So
amazing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and of course it's if they make it a more conversational tool, Google search, I'm not sure how it's going to work. So you ask it a question and it gives you like a ChatGPT kind of answer. There's not a space in there for a listing, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, websites to go to, or maybe that's what they plan on doing. But in any event, I mean, if they do that and people start using it, they'll begin to understand the conversational model, search model a lot better.
Yeah, I think what I read was they are going to include links to sources that they base the answer on. But, like with everything else on Google, I mean, are people going to click through to those links? Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
And the article I was reading was
and will you get the real way? I mean, like now when you run a Google search, like Stephanie said, you get the sponsored stuff, and then you get all this other stuff, and you can scroll down and you might take you down a different road or give you another idea, or is that going to still be there? It'd be interesting to see how they're going to do it.
Yeah. The article I was reading was from the point of view, it was talking about the fact that bloggers and some news publications and whatever are going to be unhappy about this, because if their fort is to write about something and explain some particular topic or issue, say legal tech, and suddenly now Google is providing the answer, then people aren't going to bother to click through and read these blogs or these whatever these resource websites might be anymore, and it could severely cut into their traffic. So that's an interesting issue on all of that, I think. All right, just a footnote. I saw, I think Mark Palmer wrote a great article. I think he just published it today on the legal ethics, the rise of ChatGPT, ethical considerations for legal professionals. I saw he dropped a link into the chat earlier about that. I urge everybody to read it because he did a really good job. I'm going to drop the link again just so you don't have to go scrolling back through
I'd like to read that.
But he did a really good job of covering some of the issues there. The other thing I forgot to mention kind of earlier on when we were talking about all the pre-CLOC stuff and all the coming out this week was the fact that Bloomberg Law also put out a new product for corporate legal, a contract, sort of a CLM product, and I thought that was really interesting, kind of off in a new direction for Bloomberg Law, and I wondered kind of what compelled them to do that. But and it's another one that it sounds like it's a little bit still in development. We'll see how it plays out, but I thought that was interesting that they got into that area.
Yeah, I remember being surprised when I read that too, but I didn't really go down the rabbit hole too much. But yeah, I was equally curious.
So, anything else?
I mean, I feel like this is like a depressing one, but I feel like we're starting to see layoffs in legal tech again.
And law firms.
Law firms in general, yeah. Yeah.
Law
Yeah.
firms. But you mean at companies or at law firms, Stephanie? You're talking about
Companies. I mean, yeah, I mean, Steve Lerner, Law 360 had Disco up last night, and we just published one about Everlaw. We're just starting to hear little rumors. I'm not going to mention any other ones because we haven't substantiated anything, but I feel like we went through this in like the end of the year, into the beginning of the year, and then it kind of quieted down. And I feel like there's going to be more of that coming, which is not the part of the news job I enjoy.
right. Yep. I think we've talked about it before, but it can be often very difficult to track these down too, because companies ain't talking about them, and it'd be hard sometimes to find when you hear things whether it's actually happening or not.
Well, what do they say? They're not really layoffs. We just kind of did our evaluation and decided that, 5,000 people weren't cutting the mustard, so we got rid of them.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's streamlining, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also in some cases, I mean, they are layoffs, but they're not so much economics driven as they are acquisition driven. I mean, where you get a company that starts acquiring a bunch of other companies, and then suddenly they have redundant roles and multiple people doing more or less the same thing, or in locations that they don't want to support anymore, and that becomes a whole different issue.
Right, and every time we cover, a merger acquisition, we always ask if it's going to impact that, and of course they always say no. But then
Never.
a month or two later,
Yeah.
right? It's almost inevitable in some cases, because really is. I mean, I know the word redundancy is overused, but it literally is true in those kind of situations. If you merge two companies and you have the two people doing the exact same role.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yep. Yeah, every time there's an acquisition and they say there's not going to be any staff changes, they're lying to you. Well, almost every time.
Almost lying.
And that the founders are never going to leave. That's the other one.
All
right. Well,
really, not really lying. It's just an alternative version of the facts. That's all.
Right. Yeah.
Or the CEO of one company is perfectly happy to then take a subordinate role in the new company. I'm like,
Right.
Right. Right. All right. Well, I think that's it for this week. And Stephanie, I don't know if you're going to be able to be on next week. I'll be looking forward to hear your thoughts on CLOC whenever you're next with us.
Yeah, I have a red eye
one
home.
sole person going.
Yeah, I have red eye home Thursday night, so I'll be on. I can't promise how awake I'll be, but I'll be on next week.
Yeah. All right. Good. Well, we won't notice your red eyes because your red glasses will.
The biggest Google trick. If you wear glasses, get fancy ones. No one can tell if you look exhausted on Google, or I mean Zoom, not Google. With it. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, see everybody next week. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to all the panelists for being here, and have a good Mother's Day and weekend and whatever else, everybody. See ya.
Well, everybody.
Bye.
have a good weekend, everyone.